Good afternoon and welcome to Flat Earth United Kingdom. Joining me on this sunny afternoon is Migmag. How you doing, Migmag?
Hey Nathan, how's it going? All good?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad at all. And we are also joined by Tim, otherwise known as Psychedelic Christian. How you doing, Tim?
Oakley dokley, thanks, Nath. Nice to be here.
Excellent. In case the audience hasn't gathered by the title of the video, we will be talking a little bit about the Jesuits and probably a lot about Flat Earth. So maybe we can start off with Migmag by telling us a bit about your recent interview, who it was with and what it was about. Want to start there?
Sure. Well, I did an interview with a Jesuit researcher, and he's called Johnny Cirucci. He's an Italian American, and he's been researching the Jesuits in the Vatican for quite some time now. He has a book called Illuminati Unmasked. I haven't read it yet, but I've seen a lot of a few of his lectures that he has on YouTube, and yeah, he has another book now coming out, which was called I don't remember what was the next book, but anyway, something about this. I think it's Secret History. Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah. I think he has very interesting information to share, and it's a bit different than what we are used to hearing. That the Freemasons and the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers are all behind control system.
Am I in?
We've just been joined by Nora, otherwise known as No One's Flower. How you doing, Nora?
I'm doing okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. No problems. So how did you meet this guy then? How did you get in touch with this guy, Migmag?
Well, I started researching the Jesuits, and then I just found one of his radio interviews, and so I just sent him an email and asked him if he was willing to do an interview just to explain and to sort of tie in the Flat Earth with the Jesuits. How does it all relate? And yeah.
So go on, you two have got to pipe up a little bit as well then, Nora and Tim. We were having a free-flowing conversation before we went live on Skype. So how have you two been, had your interests sparked on this particular topic? I know you've got a fair amount of insight into this, Nora.
Well, first of all, I wanted to know, can you see my camera?
Not at the moment.
Yeah, I can't make it work, so I'll just go without camera anyway.
Okay.
I had to do a million things about like signing in, and they sent me a verification code. I thought it worked on this anyway.
Next time.
Yeah. So Nathan, I didn't hear the first part of the conversation because of all that.
No worries. Just tell us what you know about the Jesuits and why you're here.
The Jesuits it's a weird subject to me because it seems to be one of those things that everybody attributes the New World Order to. It's one of them, right? So it's strange for me because, and this is going to get me a lot of bad press, I'm sure, that my father was educated by Jesuits and I was raised in a Catholic family, and the schools around Boston a lot of them are Jesuit, and you get used to having Jesuits all over the place. And now I live in Ireland, and it's full of Jesuits. I go down to the pharmacy, and there's old Jesuits hobbling in to get their prescriptions, and they don't look like evil, lords of society or anything. They look really sad. I know one called Frank, and he seems like a really nice guy, and I'm looking for all the signs of those the vow he took and all of his violent intent. It's not there. He's just an old guy living in a home.
It's much the same as Freemasonry, really, isn't it? Because you could say the same thing, like, I've gone out with girls that have had Freemason parents, and this guy's a Freemason and this and that. And I've always seen the Jesuits as like the kind of Catholic version of Freemasonry, whereas Freemasonry is more to do with the British Crown, but they link together, and they're they formed around the same time in the Middle Ages out of the Knights Templar, if I'm correct.
I mean, my understanding was that they're like the equivalent of the CIA for the Catholic Church. They're the ones who control it.
Yeah, they are. They're the Society of Jesus they're supposed to be a military arm of the Catholic Church. That's the history of it. They're the military, and apparently they used to have military training back in the Inquisition.
So were the Knights Templar during the Crusades, same thing, and they all congregated in the same area in the Holy Land, and you know, they just hung out together and whatnot. The Jesuits became the Jesuits, and the Knights Templar became the Knights Templar, became the Freemasons. One built a load of schools and went the Catholic way, and the other kind of was more like a scout group that just was a secret society. But they both deal with intelligence, and they both, like for example, the Jesuits are the ones with all the telescopes, right? Like they got the high power telescopes.
Some of them, yeah.
The Vatican, yeah.
And the Freemasons always think about knowledge.
Can one of you give a bit of detail to that? So you say they own all the telescopes.
Well, not all of the telescopes, but I mean, the best telescopes in the world, as far as I can gather, like, they've got the money and the resources, and they've got some very high-powered telescopes. And
they're supposed to have that one that is over in Arizona, but it's not really called Lucifer. They call it, everyone says it's the Lucifer telescope, but they have an organization that works with that telescope. So, and everybody conflated that into saying that, oh, the Jesuits have the Lucifer telescope. But it is one of the best telescopes in the world.
And why is it important? So if the Jesuits control the telescope, how does that affect me?
Well, it implies that they have an interest in astrophysics and that they spend a lot of money in it. They also have an observatory in Rome. So that maybe that's what awakens the suspicions.
Well, they've been linked to astrophysics since the start, wasn't it?
That's true. They also were involved in, like, was Copernicus actually Jesuit? No, or Kepler?
I'm not sure. No.
One of the people who did the heliocentric model was actually like a Jesuit, I think.
Yeah, or was a priest and then after became a Jesuit, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had no time to prepare for this. I could have found that out really easily.
Yeah.
And,
so we have the Jesuits controlling the telescopes and giving us astrophysics, and the astrophysicists tell us that we live in a system that is heliocentric, i.e. Helios, the sun, at the center, with us traveling around it on the globe.
They do.
Yeah, they basically worship the sun. They mixed pagan beliefs with Christianity, I think, which was a form of control. That was a system of control to control the minds of the people.
Yeah.
And they prosecuted Bible believers, Bible Christians.
Yeah, the Jesuits have got the Catholic fans. When I was a kid, there's three places. There's Buckingham Palace, there's Disney World, and there's the Vatican, or the Basilica. And when I was 7, I went to Disney World, and I believed in, Snow White and whatnot, and it was like a wonderful experience. Went to Buckingham Palace, and I believed in queens and kings and princesses again. But I didn't go to the Basilica in Rome until I was in my 30s, and the first thing that struck me as I walked in was, this is Disney World for Catholics. It's a marble theme park, but instead of Snow White, you've got the Virgin Mary, and instead of Mickey Mouse, you've got Saint whatever, and you've got these relics and the souvenirs as you walk out. And I think the world is divided, into realities. So you've got the Catholic reality, and then if you're British, you've got like maybe the Christian, and the royal family, and this is a reality, and then it all just ties into these. And then if you're a kid, it's Disney World and Father Christmas. And I think the Jesuits, the Freemasons, and all this, they're kind of workers in these theme parks that just keep the whole thing rolling. And we've kind of popped out of it, and we're just trying to find out the nuts and bolts and whatnot,
And I remember Jaron explaining about his Jesuit schooling and saying that before he went into the school system, he was assumed that because he was at a Jesuit high school, he would have lots of the Christian faith taught to him, when in reality he had the heliocentric system taught to him by Jesuit priests. So the scientism that we currently live in as our rigged reality was what he was taught, in the same way as all of us were taught it in school. It was no different because it was taught by Jesuit
that's
priests.
true. I went to my brother went to a Jesuit school. My father did, and it's just normal mainstream brainwashing. You just get the normal status quo in a Catholic school, but and in a Jesuit school. My father went to Boston College. It's one of the hubs of Jesuits in America, and he's still friends with all these Jesuits. He goes down there and he visits and he has tea. And my father's he's not rich. He lost his house, and these Jesuits sometimes, they'll even throw him a few bucks to help him out. This is I don't see how they're all so evil, but I'm sure it's like you say, Tim, it's like the top echelons.
Well, yeah, they're not all evil, are they? I mean,
yeah.
It's like
the
Freemasons.
Yeah, exactly. Freemasons, you have the 3 first degrees,
yeah,
and none of them knows what the ones on top.
So obviously there's some big group around the Black Pope that are controlling all of these lesser Jesuits that we know.
Well, it's the foundations. So ultimately, as you say, none of these people are deliberately or intentionally perpetrating this lie. It's just being perpetuated by these people unintentionally.
Yeah, it seems like they're just playing a part in the system, just like my friend from the ESA. He just carries on. He thinks he knows that there's a camera outside Jupiter taking pictures of it.
And this is it.
He carries on.
The system that they're perpetuating is the heliocentric system. So contrary to what most people would assume, being devoutly Christian, and especially with a lot of flat earth Christians pushing the idea that the Bible is a flat earth book. And I don't disagree with that. I just don't necessarily see that we should fall into the next system. So you'll have some great YouTubers making videos about the earth being flat and saying we should ignore these belief systems that we've been given by our schooling. And then they will immediately refer to the Bible. And ultimately, when you take it one step further, we find that the people who have created this heliocentric deception are in fact the very same people who give you the Bible.
Well, I see what you're driving at. My view is that once you start to question everything, and you question these systems that have been hoisted upon us as if they were truth, and everybody's going along as if they are truth. Once you learn to question everything, that's what that means. You question everything, and you question every belief system. And I don't understand the disconnect when people will question all of them. They'll question NASA, they'll question the hoaxes, they'll question Sandy Hook, they'll question 9/11, but then they won't question the Bible, which was created as a belief system. It's a collection of people's belief systems, and it's given by, the Old Testament was given by the elders to the people, and these elders said, oh, well, this is the truth, and it was hoisted on the people. So it was a psyop, just like our psyops in modern times. And then the New Testament there's various theories about how it came to be, but it too was used to control people. So I don't understand why truthers these days sort of stop at that. It's like they hold on to this. Sorry.
The trick is to hide it in the title, so they will use that as a defense. They will say, well, it's taken on faith. This is my belief, as though that is a defense, and get very, very annoyed when you throw that back at them in the same exact words. Well, it's just a belief, it's faith.
Yes, and I'm familiar with this problem. We've been going through it with your hangouts with Antonio and all of that, but it's still very clear to me that belief is a substitute for knowledge. You say, oh, I believe something, when you don't know it. So I kind of, I don't understand still. They seem to not want knowledge when it comes to the Bible, and they use the fact that flat earth information is in the Bible, that they mention it, that's just incidental. That's just maybe somebody else noticed it way back when. That doesn't mean it's evidence for the flat earth in the physical realm. If you're looking for evidence, that's just like kind of hearsay or supporting evidence that, oh, someone else noticed it.
But it's causing the very controversy I believe it's designed to cause, which is to say that you have the flip side of the coin of the heliocentric system being the flat Earth system, and that's being described in the very book that is preached from, but yet ignored when taught. So you have this conflict of interest by the very people you're teaching.
It's like a psyop within a psyop that causes that cognitive dissonance that people just have to gloss over because they haven't got enough time to think about it. You know, they just, if they're a Christian, they just maybe just go and listen to a vicar on a Sunday, and why think about these things, you know? But the Bible is just so massive in this, as it is in everything, because it's a phenomenal collection of multi-generational books stuck together that exists, and the fact that it exists means, and it's existed for so long, and all the everything that's it, you know, I believe, because I don't actually know, but it looks like to me that the big power elite, if you like, the people that the movers and shakers that actually draw things on maps and say we'll have this territory and we'll do this and we'll move things this way, you know, or well let's in the 1930s let's put Israel back, you know, the Rothschild was like, yeah, we'll have Israel. Those people are playing out the Bible. They use the Bible as a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy that they can work with to get their new world order. So the Bible politically, if you want to throw the religious belief side of the Bible out the window, and which is fine, but just politically the Bible is central to all of this. So you can't really just ignore the Bible, because I think that it does play into the way that the world's going, you know, generally, because the people at the top are obsessed with the narrative of it. Well, they think they're still right, trying to bring about the apocalypse. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, they use it as a blueprint, and that's very clever.
And that's why it's a magical book, and it always has been. It's a book that's still being written, you know?
Yeah, well, it's a book that's still being used as a blueprint, and that will scare the shit out of people if all of the prophecies seem to be coming to fruition.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so they're using fear by a sacred text from thousands of years, or I don't know, hundreds of years ago, and they use it as a blueprint, and then everyone's like, "Oh, look, it came true. It must be the end times." And but this happens. Sorry, this happens in all of the major Judeo-Christian religions, doesn't it? Remember, we were talking the other day. We were talking. They all come out. Yeah, we were talking the other day to my friend Salim, who is a Muslim. He's a Sufi Muslim, and he said that all of the religions have agreed that it's end times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All the ones that came out of the Judaic system, but also so did the Mayans and all that. We had that at 2012. The Buddhists talk about Maitreya coming. You know, the next Buddha. That's apparently around the corner. Yeah. And it's just a way of keeping a religion going in. If you're in a cult, what do you keep saying? I know when the end of the world is. It's in 2 years. Prepare, and then it doesn't happen. And you say, "Oh, I got my calculations wrong." It's
yeah. You push back the deadline constantly and keep the people in a state of fear. So my view is that, like, when people see this happening, why don't they just step back and say, "Hey, maybe it's not ending."
Yeah, let's go on.
You know.
So, I mean, Micmag, how does this affect us on a more daily basis? We've got a description of a system that's been created perhaps 500 years ago, and then we've got Nora describing her friend who's a Jesuit and seems perfectly pleasant. So there's a kind of disconnect between, well, what can we actually do other than turn our back on those ideas?
Well, like we were saying before, that the Jesuits have a structure similar to the Freemasons, so I don't think we can all say that they are all evil. Some of them are doing some stuff, some nefarious stuff for the Vatican or for the Black Pope. And how does this tie into the present day, or what can we do about it? Was that the second question?
Pretty much.
Well, it's I compare it to the cancer industry. You know, they want us to fight the symptoms instead of the cause, and to know the truth, we have to find who is behind it. So. Yeah, and then
figuring out
and,
the foundations.
Yeah, and the heliocentric model ties everything together. Ties the Big Bang, evolution, Darwinism. So yeah, and in the end, it's a control system to control the minds.
Big Mag, is the guy that you're in contact with, is he just a researcher, or was he himself a Jesuit?
He's just a researcher. He wasn't a Jesuit. No.
Are you talking about Johnny Starucci?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm curious about him. He takes that tack where he tries to lay it all at one door. He says, "Oh, it's the Jesuits, and they are in control of the Jews, and they are in control of Washington D.C. or the bankers and the city of London." And you just wonder, can that be true? Can that really be true?
He doesn't say it's just the Jesuits. He ties it into the Vatican and to the wealthiest families.
Yeah, well, I can see that better. I can see the wealthiest families very easily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's names like the Aldo Brandinis, Farnese,
yes,
Orsini.
Farnese, Orsini. Yeah.
And the Medici, which was the ones that started the banking system.
Yeah.
Or the Vatican.
It's important to sit down for a few moments and try and visualize the opulence that some people on this planet live in. You know, I mean, we're talking about, you know, what they're maintaining is billionaire lifestyles, and if you can just get your head round for a moment what that must be like.
Yeah.
It's almost like you think it only exists in Hollywood movies. I mean, we haven't even seen what it's like. Like, it's a different world that they live in, you know?
Yeah, and there's a difference.
We're talking about that level, what's going on. You don't even know who these people are. Do you know what I mean? I mean, just walking around the Basilica in Rome, looking around, you're just thinking, this is all about wealth. It's just all about opulence and wealth, you know?
Yeah, and there's a difference between being rich and being wealthy. Being rich, you know, it's you have enough money to sustain your family and to buy a lot of toys. Wealth is something that goes on and on from generation to generation.
Oh, we've got your camera.
I was fiddling around with the buttons while you guys were talking.
All right. As soon as you...
yeah, put on the hat.
There we go.
Thank you.
If you guys can mute when
makes me feel better.
So yeah, if you can just mute when you're not talking, that'd be brilliant.
Sorry. How do you do that?
No worries.
How do I do that, Nathan?
Oh,
on the
right,
top.
or something.
When I'm not talking, I have to hit the mute microphone on top.
Just so it doesn't feed back. But yeah, don't worry too much. If you're on a phone, we'll just figure it out.
I'll do it when I'm not talking.
Yeah. So we've got the nuts and bolts of what we've got with the Jesuits. We've got the fact that they perpetrate the heliocentric deception, and we've got to the point where, well, on the whole, they're not evil people trying to deceive us on a daily basis. But like all of us, or at least for the most part, let's say 2 years ago, all of us would be in the same boat. We would be perpetuating this lie, this heliocentric lie, just by going about our daily lives and accepting it, and then not disagreeing with it or challenging it when it comes up. The point with the Jesuits is there's this conflict. In other words, they're teaching from a book that says that you are on a stationary, immovable plane, and yet they are teaching kids in classrooms that they are on a spinning ball hurtling through space at 67,000 miles an hour. So there's this conflict, which obviously they are in themselves in the midst of cognitive dissonance, and they seem to allow the pastors and preachers to inject their own understandings to make their own cognitive dissonance make sense and preach that to a number of people who are in their churches. And again, it may be that the people who hear their preachings just accept it. I've certainly heard it from my uncle, who was a pastor. He will try and square the circle over and over again, and has even challenged people like that Dorking guy. You know, he's been interviewed by him and got to the point where he's asking him, well, in your understanding, from his Christian perspective, how do you go back beyond the Big Bang? Well, of course, that's nonsense. That's point zero. That's where you have to start this foundation. You have to start at point zero in order to build upon that foundation and have the rest of the heliocentric system actually make sense mathematically. In other words, you can't go before zero in a mathematical construct, but that mathematical construct is our existence. It's what we are told is reality, and it doesn't stack up. But yet we still have this constantly perpetuated, even by the Christians. It makes no sense, but it leaves us in constant battles with each other and constant cognitive dissonance, like I said earlier, with people who will present great information, point out that you have a belief system in the globe, but then refer you to something that has a belief system in the title.
Can I talk? What you're driving at, Nathan, is something really important about the nature of brainwash that I think about all the time. And we get into a lot of conflicts within the truth communities amongst each other. And I think this is a huge mistake. We're not understanding the nature of brainwash even works in those lower echelons of those organizations. So like you say, that preacher has to square the circle to try to match what he's teaching. But you have to think he himself is brainwashed. So, and my friend in the ESA, he himself is brainwashed, and I completely recognize this. Also, that Jesuit that I know is brainwashed, and he thinks that what he preaches or, I don't know, propounds or whatever, he thinks it is true, just as the people he teaches, you see? So you don't have the element of evil intent when the person himself is convinced that it's true. And that is probably the mechanism by which these organizations are able to implement all these plans, because those people who are in authority over the common people, they are brainwashed themselves, and they can keep the whole story going. So
yeah, I can see what like Nathan's, like, for me, you're kind of driving at the point that, say you were a teacher at a Catholic school, so you're teaching out of this book that says the earth is this is the word of God, this is it, you know, or a Christian place, you know, he died on and rose on the third day, you know, this is all, we have to believe all of this is real. And yet now I'm going to negate that by telling you in reality it's a heliocentric model, and everyone just goes along to get along. It's kind of like everyone figures it like that, how does this work on a flat earth? But they just go along because what they're really focused on is, well, I've got to pass this exam, and then I got to get a job, and I got to do this. So everyone's on this treadmill where they're not really having the discussions that we're having now. For some reason we are. That cognitive dissonance is in everyone. But how many people, I'm wondering from anybody here, how many people do you actually think as a percentage of Catholic teachers in Catholic schools, Catholic priests, people in the Vatican, people whose job it is to perpetuate the pedagogy of the Bible, actually wake up in the morning and deeply inside their pure heart wake up and go, yes, I believe he rose on the third day, and you know, and actually take their job really seriously, and aren't just going along to get along. Yeah, I ended up a priest and I'm just doing this, and I would say it's a very, 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 very small percentage.
yeah, it's almost none
Actually,
of that.
so they're all kind of liars in a way to themselves. They're all in denial.
Well,
And that's why we always say, anyone in a costume,
Exactly. But those people
whether it's
who
queen,
are
crown, robe,
yeah, but
nonsense.
you're saying they're kind of liars to themselves and that they're not undertaking the search. But some of them just never thought of it. And so there's no evil intent in those teachers. And that's what the powers that be love. They love it when there's no real evil intent, because it hasn't crossed their mind. So my approach, when I see Frank, this Jesuit, I'm going over to his house sometimes, in the Jesuit house sometimes, and I'm slowly but surely, I'm trying to implant some of my ideas into him. I'm trying to educate him.
Yeah.
So that, and if he continues, and if he goes into cognitive dissonance and then continues to propound nonsense to his students or his congregation or whatever, then I will say he's dishonest, because then he would have thought it through and decided to embrace the false paradigm.
Yeah, you know the film.
Did he have to take the Jesuit oath?
I want to ask him that next. After you had that hangout, I was like, and I believe Jeff Stewart read it online once, and this comes up a lot in these circles. I want to go and I want to ask him.
I plug this. So Zoe, Be Here and Love, is going to, or has published now, a reading of the full oath, and she read it to me pre-publication. I'm not 100% sure if she has or hasn't now, but I'm sure she will. But it was absolutely fascinating to hear it read out.
Yeah, and it was very fascinating when it happened on Jeff Stewart as well. And what I want to do eventually is, after I educate this Jesuit a little bit, I want to try to run that by him. But that could be the end of our friendship. He might just think I'm I'm his enemy if I say that.
But if that's that nasty oath you're on about, where they say, "Oh, it's all about us and everything," yeah.
Yeah.
That's the same thing as what the Jewish are always get the Talmud thrown at them. And then that always comes back as, yeah, but it's not real. It was a fraud. It was made up and all this. And then the Jesuits say, oh, no, we don't really say that. That's not real. That's just...
Yeah, I imagine if he is...
Say that or not. So, has he said it? I don't know.
I'm sure he will deny it. If
exactly.
he knows about it, he will deny it. If he doesn't know about it, he'll say, oh, horrors, where does this come from? This is just nonsense that some truther invented out of his ass or something.
Yeah.
No, so I don't know.
The film The Exorcist is really interesting because when I was a kid, I watched The Exorcist and it scared the shit out of me. But upon watching it again, when recently, it was the Exorcist in that is a Jesuit, and he's going through all of these doubts about his faith in the film, and I see the whole film as an allegory about the spiritual nature of the bigger picture, if you like the girl that's possessed is a projection of the evil in the world that goes on, what we talk about, what goes on behind closed doors, all that stuff. And in the end, he takes the demon on himself and jumps out the window, so he sacrifices himself.
You've missed something. So there's an interesting part that you just missed. I wonder if you put it in or not. So he has to go to a different psychic plane in order to have the demon come into him, and what he does in order to do that is he drinks a bottle of tequila with the grub that's got it's eaten peyote, is it, or whatever it's called, the psychedelic substance that they munch on, and then by eating that grub you have essentially a psychedelic trip, which is what he's doing in order to get his mind in the right frame of being to take on this monster that's in the child.
So in the last scene, he goes out and has a drink and drinks the grub.
You see him drink the bottle of tequila with the grub in the bottom.
Yeah, I never even noticed that. I never even noticed that. But it's very insightful to get into the mind of a Jesuit going through doubts, that film. Going through doubts about his faith and his religion and everything, because he talks about it to the other priest. And I think that the point is that he has a lack of faith and whatnot, and that's why he's right for the job, because the demon can enter him because he's not connected to God anymore or whatever in the film. But anyway,
maybe Migmag, can you tell us what's coming up on your channel, because you're doing quite a lot on the Jesuits at the moment, obviously with that interview and various other bits and bobs that you've been putting together. Can you just tell us a bit about where you've started from, where you're at now, what you've discovered, interesting tidbits, things like that?
Well, I started by watching these. There's two documentaries that are at the beginning seem to be just about Christianity, but they talk about the beginning of the Jesuits and the church, how the church wanted to control the people by getting rid of the Bible that the people had before they manipulated the Bible. So yeah, I'm just at the beginning of the research on the Jesuits. I'm reading this book called The Secret History of the Jesuits. It's an older book, and there's quite a list that I want to go through.
Migbag. I found that part of the show really very interesting. I think I put a comment about it when he was talking about the various times in history when people owning a Bible was like owning a Bible was a revolutionary act, and they were burnt at the stake with their Bible in their hands. I was thinking that, I don't know, it's a shot in the dark, and it's kind of my belief system as well, but I was thinking, because I believe people have past lives and repeated incarnations. Excuse me for that, but just say they did. Imagine maybe the people in the truth community who are very sensitive about the Bible, Maybe they're just having a genetic memory or a memory through history of that being having a Bible as being a revolutionary act, and they feel very oppressed if you insult their Bible, like people that we know.
Yeah, and it's something that they've been dealing with for such a long time, and it's they have a emotional connection to.
Yeah,
to
in
the
any
Bible
in any
also.
case, it's in the common consciousness that at some level that having a Bible and the Bible is kind of it has revolutionary content, and
Yeah.
so people feel really emotionally connected to that when they are truthers. You see what I mean? When they want to overthrow the system,
Yeah.
they say, "Oh, I've got my Bible, I've got my gun, I've got my Bible, I'm okay."
Yeah, it can be seen as a safety.
Yeah, yeah, or protection.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
So
like a nice warm blanket.
A security blanket. Yeah.
Right, we've done about half an hour in the Jesuits, which is what I was hoping for. And I'm hoping to move on now to just flat Earth in general, catch up with you guys about where you're at.
Well, I think there's a lot more to be done on the Jesuits. A lot more. And I hope that Mi'kmaq keeps it up.
yeah, I'll certainly be. I'll continue my research for sure.
Yeah.
I'll post whatever I find interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure we'll touch on other things to do with it. I'm just keen to bring it on to flat Earth because I've done 12 months of shows, so I'm really chuffed to be doing this particular show because I've now done a year of at least a show every single week for a year on flat Earth.
Oh, nice.
I'm just so chuffed with myself that now it's got to that point. I want to just talk about flat Earth, talk about where we've all come, our journeys through it. Maybe half an hour on that. Hopefully that'll keep the audience nice and sweet as well.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday, Nate.
Well, it's longer than 12 months in flat Earth. It's just
Excellent.
since doing the Hangouts, specifically doing live shows. And I remember the first ever show, I'd invited Fake Spaceman in Space onto the show, and he let me down at the last minute. And being the consummate professional, of course, that I am, I decided, right, I'm going to do it anyway. So I just did the show. It was very short. It was about half an hour long, just me. And it was terrifying. It was really, really scary. Pressing go, worrying about getting an audience. I played a couple of minutes of music, hoping to gain an audience. Now it's just go. Who cares if anyone's watching? It's a totally different ball game 12 months down the line. But the subject
Congratulations. And now you're terrifying me.
Yeah.
This is my first.
Just like a phone call, but with a specific subject matter. Well, for some it's just like a phone call. But...
Nate, Nora, whilst we're on that subject of setting up your channel, Nora and I have just set up a channel called Magic Squared, and we want to do hangouts and interviews and stuff like that. So maybe if you want to come on that, and Mi'kmaq, if you want to come on, we'll organise something and set a date.
Sure.
Wicked. All right.
Cool.
Okay.
Definitely. Well, maybe if we can go down the line, start with you, Mi'kmaq, because you're probably the newest into flat Earth. I mean, how did you find out the Earth was flat?
Well, it was in 2015, like in September, August, around that date. And I just kept, like most of us, kept seeing the flat Earth videos popping up on the side on YouTube, and I was always dismissing it. Just it's ridiculous. It's an ancient idea. And after a while, I just thought, okay, well, I'll just watch this and see, well, why is it coming back? And it was an Eric Dubay video, the 200 proofs. And from that point on, I just watched more and more. Try to do the curve test myself, with a body of water. I was living near a very, very big lake, so I didn't find the curve, and started from there.
It's pretty much what it always boils down to. There is no curvature. Did you guys? I'll come back to Nora and Tim in a minute. But did you guys see Nick from Phuket Words and his debate that he did yesterday?
4 hours.
It was excellent. Yes.
Yeah.
What fascinated me about that interview was there was a part in it when he was showing some reflection across a body of water, and it was really clear, really obvious. The guy couldn't see it. He was literally blind to it.
I started commenting like mad because I couldn't believe he couldn't see it. It was obvious. It was right in front of his nose, and he couldn't see that it was doubled up. I know I'm a visual artist, but I think he could have seen it. He could have seen it too.
That's cognitive dissonance of such a degree that I've never seen it, where it's something that's visual, that someone's denying something visual. I've seen it time and time again when someone explains something and they can't wrap their head around the explanation verbally. But when it's pictorial, you go, wow, this guy is literally blind to what he's doing.
I was saying he should have his license taken off him. Yeah.
It boils down to belief in authority. There's these scientists that say that the world is like this, so whatever other people say, you know, they're wrong.
Wait.
Uh-oh.
Sorry, hang on.
The joy of Google Hangouts. Let's move down the line. So Nora, obviously we know your backstory, but tell the audience a little bit about how you've.
Okay.
Oh my God! Don't even remind me that there is an audience. Well, okay. I'm a painter, and I usually listen to audios, and I do all my research kind of that way because I have to paint, and you know, because you have to get them done. So I'll always be listening to like reams and reams of audios as I paint, as a background, because I'm not into listening to music. But I study piano, and I'd rather listen to spoken word. And I was taking things in slowly, and I tend to get things kind of late. It kind of clicks in as I'm thinking of other things. And so I had listened from the beginning to Matt Boylan, and I thought, yeah, he's cool. He's a painter, and he's doing the same kind of things, and he likes Caravaggio, and that kind of made me like him. And then so I listened to the things about is this a painting or what do you say, photo or painting, and that was a really cool presentation. I liked him. I just liked to watch him paint and stuff like that, but I never quite clicked about flat or sphere. And so time went on, and that's in my subconscious, and then finally I was doing another painting in my room, and I was like, and I just heard something came on randomly on the autoplay, and it was Mark Sargent's Clues. And I said, that's cool. He's like that guy, Matt Boylan. He's doing the same thing. And I just continued painting, and then he went through all the clues, and then it started to hit me. Then it hit me, and it all came very clear. Yes, this is real evidence, I thought. And then I started following it up like mad, like everybody does, like day and night videos, research, because I research a lot. When I research, I just research straight through the night, 24/7. I don't sleep, and I just took it all in, and I said, there's no way to be intellectually honest unless I consider this information. And so I had this argument online with 5 Red Pears, somewhere in that, about after the Ball Earth Skeptic Roundtable then happened, and I followed all of that. And during that I had a argument with 5 Red Pears about certain points of the information, and I realized that in certain parts he was not being intellectually honest. He was claiming to know things he didn't know, which is something I don't want to do. So I was definitely very, very skeptical of the spinning ball, and I couldn't be honest if I didn't say that I thought that. So I looked a little bit at the tests, and I visited Matrix Decode down in Spain with my now ex, and he was a really cool guy, and he was doing the tests, and I saw the lighthouse that he could see at a distance that was in his test, and it was all pretty convincing that with that curvature trigonometry, there is no curvature. So
especially
I carried on like that.
Being an artist, you've got a pretty good handle on perspective anyway.
That is one of the most fascinating parts of it for me, and one of the strangest things to me that one of the things that strikes me as most strange in people who try to argue that the ship goes over the curve is that they don't take into consideration perspective. It's like they leave this variable out of the whole equation. How can you? And I think that I can sit and contemplate the miracle of perspective all day. I think it's wonderful that the whole reason we know something is far is because it's small in our vision field. I mean, how did that happen? It's a miracle that the eye matches our reality so that we know something is far. Imagine if that didn't happen. We can't imagine a world in which that didn't happen. Our vision is intrinsic to our understanding of reality.
Au contraire, we can imagine a world that's not like that, and we're told about it daily, and 99% of people think they're on it, spinning around.
I know, but just in the idea of visual perspective, people cannot imagine a world in which things that are far do not appear small. It would be crazy. It would be a mess of everything big. So I don't know. That's one of the things that fascinates me about it.
You can see stuff like visual perspective. You hear me? Can you?
Yeah, it's a bit low, the sound.
Maybe unplug your headphones. It was better without them, to be honest.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yeah, a bit better.
Yeah, a bit better. All right, that's cool. Sorry, that phone call, I'm being summoned down the recording studio. That really screwed up my thing.
Oh, right. Have you got to head off?
No, I'm all right. I'm ignoring him. Sorry, Nathan.
Well, let's start you off just to get it in a nice order. So tell us about your journey through finding out that the world is not a spinning globe. How did you find yourself on the level plane that is flat Earth?
Well, the story goes back a bit to psychedelics again that I was just mentioning then, which will give anybody a good experience of seeing the world without your brain putting everything into perspective if you wanted to do that. But going back to like 2004, you know, when I was had a psychedelic experience after taking psilocybin mushrooms, that put me in the reality is not as it appears to be, you know, into that category. And then in my creative endeavors through music and a band, I was always pushing forward to whatever audience I had, this idea that I always used to say they used to laugh when they thought the earth was flat, or they laugh at people that thought the earth was flat, and in the future they're going to laugh at us thinking it's a spinning ball. But I had really I had no model for that. But that was it. So I was in the realm category then. But then how I ended up with you guys was, I'm also a big fan of comedy. I love my comedy and I love following comedians. And so I was just checking out looking for new comedians on YouTube, and Matt Powerland came up with his comedy thing he did about, is it a photo or a painting? And I watched it, and I remembered going to Disney World, and I remembered Epcot, and I remembered all the space programming, and I thought, I'm going to have a look at some images of Earth from space. And as I did that, the seed just sprouted in my mind. Oh my God. I know I'm pretty damn sure that they never went to the moon, but it just twigged for me, like they could be faking everything. You know what I mean? That's when it twigged. And I had recently just had a job where I worked online for a company that was one big lie. And my job was to be an actor and in real time lie to very rich people whilst they kept paying on their credit card to talk to who they thought was someone else. If you can figure that out. Fake dating site, basically, right? And to be on the side of, like, with a bunch of people that know that, like, can't believe that these people can't figure out that this is like that they just I even said to one of the clients, I said, do you sometimes wonder if, like, any of the profiles on here are real or not? Do you know what I mean? And he called me a conspiracy theorist. He thought he was talking to a 32-year-old woman in Birmingham, just typing, you know? So I understood Jupiter's delight, and I understood that at the top levels, it just made sense. It looked more like, yeah, this is true. They're absolutely bullshitting us completely. They're a money funneling, funding, money generating machine that just continuously starts projects that expand off into the future. And they employ people who believe in these projects to figure out, like, you know, they compartmentalize everyone, give loads of people loads of jobs, and just suck up loads of funding for it. And it was just from watching Matt Powerland's Is This a Photo or a Painting that started that. And then, of course, I saw Patricia's show, and I started to listen to that as I was going to sleep because I'm an insomniac, and she's got a great way of interviewing people. And before I knew it, I was on there. Because I came to meet you in Oxford, I thought I got to figure out whether these guys. Like, I thought I saw your thing, Nathan, saying we're having an Oxford meetup, and I said I'm going to that. I am, because I always go to these things. I've met Whitley Strieber. You know, I was into the whole alien abduction phenomena and how that links in with the DMT experience, because it's all other realmy and other kind of like, you know, that was my last jumping off place before I thought.
I remember your first encounter with Patricia Steere at Oxford, and I seem to remember you apologising to her for having your suspicions about her. Am I correct?
I was apologising for that. And
hold on, don't push over that. What was that exactly?
What was what?
So you had your suspicions, and I didn't get privy to the rest of the conversation. So I overheard that bit of the conversation where you said, I'm sorry, you know, I thought you were this and that, but I didn't really hear the rest of it. So I want to know what you actually thought. Well,
first of all, I was saying, you know, I don't think you're a shill. I put that in a video I made at Oxford, but I was going through quite a bit of cognitive dissonance myself when I started to consider that the fact that the Earth might not be a globe. I mean, you know, to be honest, I even had a bad state of anxiety, and you know, and so during this period, I was messaging Patricia on Facebook and stuff like that. Sometimes after having a few beers, which I've given up now. And, you know, questioning whether or not this was a psyop. And even now I can get like paranoia about, because I was saying to Migmag before this hangout started, like every day I have to wake up and I have to ask myself the question, do I have a bunch of really intelligent friends who are considering the fact that the Earth really is not a globe and that we're being lied to? Or am I dumb and I have a bunch of dumb friends and we all think we're clever? Do you know what I mean? I mean, I have to ask myself that every day. And it's fun either way, you know, because I don't really mind, because for me, it's all a kind of inner journey of spiritual growth anyway. So whether the Earth's round, flat,
I know what you mean, but I had the reverse of that, Tim, which is to say that you said about looking up the pictures of the Earth from space after the back of seeing Matt Powerland, and that wasn't the same for me. I looked at pictures of Earth from space, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 years ago, just because I wanted a nice background. It's a very similar story to Mark Sargent. So he was just looking for a nice background for a network he was designing. I, at a similar time, was looking for a backdrop for my PC because I had a nice big projection screen. What I was actually looking for was 24-hour globe spinning, because I thought that would look cool on my big projector. Of course, you couldn't find that, so you start looking for pictures of Earth from space, and you can't find that. And at the time, I just wrote that off. It's like, no, that's a bit crap. Didn't give it any more thought. But you put that on the back burner, or however you want to phrase it. And then when I came across Flat Earth and saw Matt Powerland, I was already nodding away going, yeah, that I've already seen this. I've already got to that point where I've looked at it and gone, that don't make a lot of sense, but just decided to ignore it and moved on.
I was already long on board with that the moon landings were fake, but I hadn't known about the fact that they didn't have any more pictures from space, except that one thing from Apollo in 1972. I was like, whoa, why wouldn't they cover their tracks and make more? You know, it just seems a little bit...
What was good for me was...
Sorry, it was the same with the moon landing hoax. I looked at it years and years and years ago, and, you know, looked at every aspect of it and just went, well, that's the thing. You put it on the back burner and, you know, you don't let it affect your life. It's only when you reach, or for me, when I reached a tipping point, and it was 2 words. It was Matt Powerland saying the words flat Earth was enough for me to suddenly have a rush of all those things that I'd put on the back burner each and every time. Right back to when I was, you know, 6 or 7 years old, spinning a bucket of water around, having just had the explanation of gravity given to me, going, this kind of doesn't make sense to me. But you put it on the back burner and move on with life. And like you said right at the beginning of the show, I think it was you, Tim, you've got to kind of get on with things. You've got to kind of get your life together, get your job, pay your bills. Not that I was thinking that at 7 years old, but you know what I'm driving at.
Yeah. And going back to Disney World again, because I went, you know, the programming that Epcot is or was at the time. It was all about space. It was all about the moon landings. You sat in this little car and you went round a journey around the universe, and there were astronauts on the International Space Station, and it was telling you all about space, and and if you go back and look at NASA in the 50s, 60s, 70s, look at their spacesuits, just look at the way things change. You can see the curvature in the propaganda as styles, fashions, and technology changes, and it doesn't quite add up. Like the spacesuits used to be really thin, like cat suits, and they're really movable and manageable, and now they're really big and bulky. It's like, well, shouldn't it have gone the other way around? I mean,
yeah, same with things like Universal Studios. So Universal from the I'm going to say 40s, that's probably the 50s, but we were presenting us with depictions of a globe. And they were pretty damn close to what we get now, albeit in black and white and slightly fuzzy. But as the progression got to the point where we're at the 60s and we're getting the first pictures of just a bit of Earth curvature, we've got Universal presenting us with more and more accurate representations of the globe. Then you get it to the blue marble, and the two are pretty much coinciding. In fact, I would say that Universal, well, no, that's absolutely the case. We're always ahead of the curve, excuse the pun, in terms of what the globe should look like. And when you get a representation today from Universal, I mean, it's absolutely astonishing with THX sound and booming bass. But you get, that Universal sweeping around the side of a really massive globe on a whatever 100-foot projection screen in the cinema. It's absolutely overwhelming. Most people, they're just munching their popcorn because they've seen it 100 times. They're not taking into consideration the amount of effect that superb visual experience has on you each and every time that you watch that globe. It's just reinforcing that idea each and every time you watch it. And lo and behold, you look at NASA's globe or the ISS footage, it's crap. Absolute rubbish by comparison to the Universal presentation of the same thing. And has been since dawn.
I think that all of us, if you get into this research, you start to think that you're being bombarded with globe propaganda and programming because you notice it. It's in your mind. And it is there, and that's another thing that raises a lot of suspicions for me, because why would they put all that kind of propaganda unless they needed to? So that's one thing.
They can do it without even thinking about it. So it's just a cool image. People will go and use it. I've done it myself, like I explained for my screensaver. Now, by doing that, essentially, my wife or anyone who comes in and sees that screen, and in the case of Mark Sargent, anyone who looks at his network, are looking at a fake image. Now, they're not going to give that any consideration. Why is it used? Well, because it's cool. The globe is quite a cool sci-fi thing. Now, you think of it as a flat earther, it really is a cool sci-fi presentation of where we live, because it's nothing like where we live. Nothing at all. But yet we've been given it and indoctrinated it on a liminal level, not a subliminal level, a subliminal level also. But that was where I came in just before Flat Earth. The bit that I was getting fascinated by was the subliminal programming, psychopaths as well, but for this example, the subliminal programming was more blatant when I realized the globe programming, because you see it everywhere, and it's not subliminal. It's very much in your face. It's there on the surface for you to take in on every cartoon. You see it on every South Park, every Seth MacFarlane cartoon. At some stage in the cartoon, there'll be a globe in a kid's bedroom. Now, that's not subliminal. It's not hidden. It's not a sex in the clouds. It's right in your face. But no one gives it any consideration. They're not going to think that that's the reason they've been brainwashed, because they're seeing it all day. It's just a globe on a desk. Nothing to be considered.
I think they use it to confirm the globe. So they teach us from kids, and kids are not going to question what a teacher or their parents say. So after, when you grow up, you have to constantly be reminded that, okay, you live on a globe. This is the Earth. This is where you live. And yeah, you were saying about Universal Studios. I think the first time that they showed the globe was 1920. And the first time they went to space was 1946 or 1948. So how would they know for sure that there was a globe in 1920?
Well, they had globe models throughout history. I was reading about cartography yesterday, and there's plenty of phases where they would have a sphere. Aristotle gave spherical proofs as well. So,
but for a long time, a couple of thousand years, we've had a man on a stick, right? Everyone had a crucifix that was in. You had to be religious. So we've gone from a man on a stick to the last 500 years, a ball on a stick. That's your religious idol that you're worshipping, and that's a good way of. I try and talk to people about it. I say, but you're kind of in a cult, like a religion, where you believe in a globe. You've got a globe on a stick in your room now, but you don't believe in the man on the stick. But you're clever because you believe in the globe on a stick. But if you were a Scientologist, you'd have some silly symbol that represented your Thetan clear thing, and you'd believe in that. And they're all the same. We stand in not knowing. Actually, we stand in not knowing. You know, there is no icon. There is no thing on a stick that can represent the reality in which we live. Because it's like I've always said, it's more like the shape of a dream to me. So.
Yeah, I agree with the fact that we have to stand in not knowing, and that is why I was attracted to this community, because at least they honestly said, "Hey, I don't know."
Yeah.
Yeah, and in the end, it's a choice. You can't force people to question their religion, to question where they live at. They have to choose themselves to question and to research themselves the information.
Mm.
As much as you want to.
You may remember this, Mi'kmaq, but we had, certainly when I was growing up, the BBC ident was a globe with the BBC One going around it, and at the beginning of every single show they had the BBC ident, and that was what we got as kids growing up. Do you guys remember that?
Yeah. Me and yeah, I do remember that. I was watching old children's TV shows the other day, and the first thing I saw was a globe in the corner of the room.
Yeah, and they always have spacemen for the children's blankets in their rooms, and spacemen on the wall, and there's a huge push to make it seem popular to be an astronaut.
And I think that they really focus on the kids, even with everything, with music, with movies, because they're not worried about the adults. We are already indoctrinated and programmed. So their main focus is to just get the kids along with the program.
Yeah.
And that's why movies seem stupid and music seems retarded for us.
Yeah, so this is what you like Tom Sheridan, don't you, Nathan? This is what Tom Sheridan calls, what does he call them? The masters or the lords of perception are the ones putting this stuff out. So I kind of wonder, then, who are they? Because we've been through the Jesuits, we've been through the Masons. We know the Masons are all involved in NASA. But who's putting out all of these globes on children's advertising and cartoons? The masters of perception are there doing it.
Absolutely. Who we may not ever know who's at the top of that chain. We can speculate. I know obviously we started off this show by talking about the Jesuits, and we'll come back to that because learn of the Jesuit order, ironically, when I was asking Mi'kmaq, have you seen this guy? The first thing he shared was his video on TV is the way that we are brainwashed. So while we may not know who, we definitely know how. So we are brainwashed by the TV. And that's, you know, we've talked about Seth MacFarlane, we've talked about the news, cinema I'd put in the same category. All of these globe indoctrinations come pretty much primarily from that means. That's not to say that music doesn't contain it, because it does. But most people are glued to the TV far more than they should be. And that's where most of the programming comes in. Or at least the reinforcement of that programming. We've just said that the main bulk of it comes from childhood. And this is kind of where I was hoping to lead the show on to next, because Flat Earth, unlike a lot of other conspiracy theories for me, psychopaths or subliminals, they don't lead you to looking at dinosaurs or inoculations or 9/11 or any of the other conspiracies, whereas Flat Earth does seem to have this ability to span you out into a mass of other deceptions that we are having perpetrated on us on a daily basis.
Mm. Yeah, it's the jigsaw puzzle piece, the final one that goes in the middle when you complete the picture, Flat Earth, it seems, and then you can see the whole picture. You know, it's the last puzzle piece, and that's why this community has sprung up, I think, because we've all found ourselves stood together on the jigsaw puzzle, and it is the same.
Exactly, it's the foundation of it all. So yeah, obviously there's you can tie most things back into flat Earth because of the nature of it being the foundation of our very existence. The heliocentric deception props it all up. That's where we live. That's where it starts.
And going back to the Bible again, that's why people run to the Bible, because in the Bible it does say things like, there will be a great deception and everyone will fall for the great deception. And it's like, well, this seems pretty much like a great deception, you know? And so it makes you wonder, how far back do these societies go and tie in with the magical work, which is the Bible. It's a magical work. It's a book of symbols. Letters and words are symbols. And that's why it does tie into the Bible so much. You don't have to be a Christian to be a Bible to see how it fits into that, because I think there are links. Obviously, the Jesuits are linked to the Bible, and the Judaic texts, so the Freemasons, they're all linked to it. So we can't throw the Bible away.
Brilliant segue. I was just about to ask Mi'kmaq to detail this. So we've got learning the Jesuit order. He was my route into a lot of the NASA fakery and ISS fakery. Now, his meltdown aside, when he said, well, we won't go into his meltdown. He puts out a lot of excellent information on space fakery. He even made a comment recently on one of my videos that was showing the lunar lander taking off. My point being that, you know, you'd need a cameraman to achieve that shot. He detailed, you know, the fact that you wouldn't be able to do it with the delay. It seems highly unlikely with their explanation. But he's there putting this information out, and he's got the title Learner of the Jesuit Order. So why would he be detailing NASA hoaxery? Maybe you can speak to that, Mi'kmaq.
Well, I don't know. Maybe he started researching with the Freemasons, and then found the Jesuits, and now he's trying to tie everything together. I'm not very familiar with his work, but
no, sure. I'm asking you to pretty much do the same thing, because that's pretty much what you're doing on your channel. I'm leaving it as a segue for you to sort of detail what you're doing. That's right. What I'm trying to do. Although I mentioned the Jesuit order, you're doing a similar thing.
Yeah. Well, I want to know who's behind it, because we can go all this time bumping heads with each other. No, this is exactly what they want. They want divide and conquer. And they don't want us pointing the finger at them or looking at them at all. So we have all these things: the vaccines, the fluoride, the Jews, the Freemasons, and we just keep dividing between ourselves. When we have the guys in power, whatever you want to call them, that keep doing. They keep giving us deceptions and lies. And if we don't focus on them, we're just going to continue eating their own poison.
Yes, and Mi'kmaq, part of the poison is us fighting between each other.
Yeah.
And if I don't really, anyone has really said was a shill in this movement, I kind of really don't agree with it. But if it was planted by the powers that be in some kind of roundabout way, I think they would also have tried to include, I think through Google and different hangouts, a divide and conquer mechanism. And we have seen that we fall apart so easily and fight so easily, and usually those things hinge on typical divide and conquer things like religion.
Exactly, and there is in the Bible. So you have the Bible saying one thing and the teachings of the church in schools saying something completely different to divide us. And then you have problem, reaction, solution. You know, we see it time and time again on the videos that we watch daily when they present the solution as the Bible, despite the contradiction in terms, the fact that they've pointed out that everything you're hanging your beliefs on currently are just that, beliefs. They're not actually facts, they're theories. And to present a book as a solution to that problem creates a divide, it creates a rift. We're seeing this right now. You know, a lot of people are labeling it the end of flat Earth, and I don't see it as the case. I hopefully see it as a future into people waking up to the wider deception and just seeing that they've reached a point where they're saying, I don't believe this, I don't believe this, I don't believe this information that's been handed to me. Take a look at this information that's been handed to me. Eventually people will see this as being crazy as being a nonsensical way of going about truth seeking. And hopefully that will leave us with the realization that they have to leave the truth of flat Earth in the mix. They have to leave it on a simmer. Why? So that it can be ridiculed. You have to have that truth suppressed. If people come across it, and we all know this, we will and are ridiculed. We will be ridiculed continually as long as we are doing this and talking about this subject. There will be people who will consider us idiots because they have their dogmatic faith in scientism, in the fact that they live on a spinning ball. And us pointing out that that fact is not a fact will only cause more rift, will only cause more divides. So you have the people out there like John Le Bon that are saying, well, maybe if we just approach it differently and point out that they are not on a spinning ball because we can categorically disprove that. Well, to my happy understanding, we can easily go out and observe the fact that it's flat. It ties up with every single observation. And Nora, you, like you say, when you're looking at it from an artist's perspective, it just makes sense. It makes no sense when you put in things like curvature and add in the mathematics and add in the tremendous speeds that we all travel. So all of the things that we are taught, they're not real. All the things that we observe are real, and we observe a flat, static plane.
Yeah, that's really what.
Anything you want to round out with? I know.
Well, I don't know. I just thought that was really. Oh, am I on? Oh. I was just saying that I wanted to say that was really well said about before when we were talking about divide and conquer, that you taking a glass half full approach to the whole outlook. And I think that's true. I think that we have a right to look for the truth and to seek in any area. The fact that they inserted bits of divide and conquer in this probably means we're onto something. It almost doesn't matter whether it's flat or round, say, but what matters is that we have a duty and a right to search for the truth, and we have a right to do it unhindered. And I don't know what I wanted to say about that, but
we have a right to apply the scientific method and be praised rather than ridiculed for doing just that. And that's precisely
we have a right to do it without being meddled with by the lords of perception, or have people put divide and conquer things on us, or put agents in to make us emotionally upset. You know, we have a right to do it unhindered.
That's it. And unfortunately for us, the system itself makes us our own worst enemy. Our own brothers and sisters will, in literal terms, our own family will call us stupid. Well, that's not a CIA agent shill telling you that you're an idiot for looking into the flat Earth. That's your own family, because of the system, because of these Jesuits that we talk about at the beginning that are perfectly pleasant people. They are ultimately perpetuating the lie because it's been indoctrinated into them, not because they're bad.
Yeah, and so I think that's where compassion comes in. When you know that, and you're in our position, you can see that it's because of the brainwashing and they've been programmed, you can exercise compassion and just be patient, and maybe they'll come around to understand that you were just looking for the truth. Yeah.
Did you have anything else you wanted to add, Tim, before we wrap up? You're on mute at the moment.
No, just wanted to add a bit about our. It's not just a right. I think it's a drive. It's an instinct. I mean, if you reach 40 years of age and you have a passion and excitement about finding out about the reality that you live in, if that childlike curiosity is still there, that's a good thing. That doesn't make you immature or silly or anything like that. It's very exciting and stimulating, and I say fair play to all of us for questioning everything. I think it's the most fun I've had in ages. I'm just glad I met all you guys.
Absolutely.
It's absolutely compelling, isn't it?
Yeah. And I'm open. I don't, like I say, I take the Robert Anton Wilson approach. I don't try not to believe anything. I like to stay in a state of wonder at it. If I can nail something down flat, so to speak, then that's great. But that's the nature of the beast we're dealing with. It's so fuzzy around the edges. It's like everything else. you look at quantum physics, the smaller you look, the fuzzier it gets around the edges. The farther out you look, the bigger you look, the fuzzier it gets around the edges. You want to try and see a UFO captured on film, it's fuzzy around the edges. You want a life after death experience, psychedelic experience, DMT, they're all fuzzy around the edges. And those fuzzy edges, there's a great party going on in those fuzzy edges, and we're in the middle of it. And so, yeah, it's all good.
What about you, Migbag? I'm going to do a little bit of thanks to the audience at large, but before I do, if you can give us a few last words, that'd be brilliant.
Yeah, I would just like to see more people researching the Jesuits and the Vatican, and you know, it was a Jesuit who created the Big Bang Theory, and that's not the only thing that they've created. So, if you're really interested in flat Earth and who is behind this deception, then I think it's important to look to the Jesuits, the Vatican.
Well said. So yeah, I'm going to thank you guys first, and then thank my audience. So massive thank you to Psychedelic Christian Tim for being here. Thank you very much indeed, and also Nora. Much thanks and appreciation. And last but not least, Migbag, thank you very, very, very much for being on Flat Earth UK and talking about the Jesuits today. And I'm going to say an extra special thanks to all of the people who have tuned into Flat Earth UK and all of the other live shows that I've done over the course of the last 12 months. You will have no idea how grateful I am. There's about 120, 125 people who are watching this now. And from the first show with 5 or 10 viewers, it's a massive transformation in terms of me and what I've done on this channel, and it's all thanks to the people who have been watching, sharing, liking and subscribing. So to all of you who have joined us in chat, an absolutely massive thank you. I've been Nathan Oakley, and with any luck I'll see you all again in the next video.
Thank you.